Welcome to another episode of the Swords and Sports Podcast. One man sure to read 52 fantasy books in 52 weeks and create 52 podcasts documenting the experience. Shout out to Michael R. Fletcher. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but there's some intro music now to the podcast. I've stepped up the production value +1. So now it's gone from below average to slightly below average. Michael R. Fletcher is a one-time guest of the show and one-time future guest of the show. He's coming up in a few weeks, and I asked him, I'm like, yo, you have this musical persona under the Mad Doppel band. Check them out on SoundCloud. Can you do some intro music for me? And in typical Michael R. Fletcher fashion, he sends me an email with the subject line metal, ! And an audio that has no name or anything. So shout out to this unnamed song that is now the intro to the Swords and Sports Podcast. If it's not already clear, I'm your host, Mike Mogues, the man embarking on this 52-book journey. And this week, I'm joined by Jay Boyce, winner of the 2019 Warriors and Wizards Award for Best New LitRPG author, to talk about her book, Siphon. The interview is after the book details. That is a long name for an award. A quick self-promo, you can find this podcast on all your podcast listening platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible. If you'd be so kind as to subscribe and leave a 5-star review or rating or whatever the system you're listening on has as a system for rating, which was a terrible way of saying, maybe one day I'll reach the point where I can stop begging for this stuff. I know we're all tired of hearing it, but you know what? Gotta do it as part of the job. What can I say? I'm a man enslaved by the system. For all the details about upcoming episodes, including featured books, author interviews, and more, you can follow me at Swords and Sports on Twitter. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with the show, but there has been a new author interview every single week since the second week of January. I'm on a tear. And it has been an absolute blast getting to meet all these people, getting to read all their books, and then talk to them about it. And you know what? I don't plan on stopping it. So shout out to everybody who's been listening. Shout out to all the authors who keep coming on. And shout out to myself for having, the drive to continue doing this. I can't even say that seriously. Let's do book details because I know we're all dying for the interview and less of me talking directly at everybody. The book is called Siphon. The author is, as I mentioned, Jay Boyce, who is coming up right after these book details. The series is A Touch of Power. This is book number 1. It was published on October 15th, 2018. And the paperback edition is 349 pages. The book is published by Mountaindale Press, a independent press that has doing a ton of cool content that I think is really worth checking out. I was very impressed by their selection and their whole message and a lot of the stuff they're doing. You would think that I was sponsored by them. I'm not. I just enjoy them. What are the books in the series? Because there are 3 of them out right now. I believe she is working on book 4, and she might mention this in the interview, but if you want chapters of her upcoming books, you can subscribe to her Patreon, and she'll just straight up give them to you as a gift. I mean, you pay for the gift, but it is a gift because who wouldn't want advanced chapters of a book for a series that they're a huge fan of? So, the books in the series are Siphon, Adapt, and Sense. Not this book, but her as an author was the winner of the 2019 Warriors and Wizards Award for Best New LitRPG Author, which I think they call the Noob, which is super funny if you've ever done any sort of RPG or video game in general. She was also nominated as a finalist for the Independent Audiobook Awards. That's pretty cool. Just as a quick spoiler warning, let me repeat, this is the spoiler warning. And if I ever release a video one day, I am looking eyes glaring into the camera, saying, spoiler warning, this podcast and this interview contains spoilers for Jay Boyce's Siphon. If you haven't read the book yet and are planning to, consider this your warning. Without further ado, one of the upcoming stars of the new subgenre of LitRPG, I present to you Boyce. All right, everybody, welcome to another week and another episode of the Swords of Sports podcast. This week, I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by the author of the fantastic book Siphon, book 1 of the A Touch of Power series. So, welcome to the show, Jay.
Thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
My first question, did you dye your hair? I thought your natural hair color was pink.
No, it's actually a wig. I have a collection of like 75 wigs.
Oh my God.
I switch between for podcasts and public appearances. It's kind of just, it's something that I love doing. Also, it's kind of a safety net for me. Going to cons and stuff like that, I'm very much an introverted extrovert. So I can do extroversion in short quantities, but then I kind of need to be able to take a step back and just not shut down or try and shut down sometimes. So the wigs are a really easy way to do that because it's a good starting point for people to talk to me. But I can also take it off and just look like a normal person who blends into the background if I need to.
That's like wearing like sunglasses or something almost, right?
It really is. It's kind of, it's something that I love, not only love doing, but, and you know, I just have fun with it, but it allows me to create a barrier if I need to.
So then I guess the follow-up question is, can I borrow some of your wigs? Because I am lacking.
You know, I have a lot of good, I could give you some good links for cheap wigs. They're really not that expensive, and I've given a lot of advice on getting starter sets, so I could hook you up.
I feel like that's what I need to come with to really mix things up on this show. Just wild colored hair.
It's so much fun, and honestly, it's a great talking point. Automatically, like, and it kind of showcases my nerd heart. Like,
yeah,
people expect me to be a nerd when I have like rainbow colored hair.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. But I think it's very cool, and I think that you mixing it up is just like a unique way to present yourself to the public.
Well, and honestly, it's also a really easy way for people to pick me out in a crowd.
Right. I mean, I guess if you're picking me out from in a crowd, it's, you know, whatever person's head the light is bouncing off of. So
hey, the shiny light it's not a bad look.
Yeah, it's not a choice. So how'd you get hooked up with that rascal Mike Haspel?
Mike, I actually met him at a convention. He is a wonderful, wonderful man who I was hanging around at the booth that he was in because I had friends there. And so at one Salt Lake FanX, I was hanging around with him and a bunch of the people at the booth, and he's just such a sweet guy. Like, I made some really great friends that year, and like it's just continued through the last couple of years. So I'm really grateful for it. They took a pity on the girl who was just like, like, I
love it. He is a great guy. I had him on maybe a few weeks ago, and you know, that's how we made this happen. So I'm super excited about it. So in your author bio, and I always feel like these things are pretty hard for someone to write.
It's
like the worst I can imagine.
I think blurbs are actually worse.
Right.
But the bio is pretty bad too, because you're like, well, what do I actually like? What do people read these things?
Right. Unfortunately, like, yes, they do, but it's not a good glimpse into who the person is. You know, it's like curated to kind of like hit a general audience. But there is some interesting details in there. So you take random classes at your local university. What classes do you take? Like, where do we go from here?
So I did. I'm not doing that currently because COVID kind of screwed that up. Of course,
right? Well, I guess you could Zoom crash.
Yeah, and I do. So what was happening was I did transcribing for deaf students or hard of hearing students.
So okay, this makes a lot more sense.
They were taking, I ended up taking. So I have literally been in hundreds and hundreds of college courses that span pretty much every single major. I've done med classes, I've done computer tech classes, I've done marketing, I've done special ed, I've done medical, I've done biologies, I've done several of the science ones, English, math, I've done a couple foreign language ones, like you name it. And I've psychology and sociology, social work. I've pretty much taken classes
In everything.
in everything.
That's super fascinating. I do you have something that was like a particular favorite of yours?
So I really enjoyed the psychology class, certain psychology classes.
Right.
With anything, there are some teachers that are better than others.
Of course.
So some of them were more fun than others. A lot of the computer ones I enjoyed too, as long as they weren't like the actual like Linux programming ones. I didn't
Yeah, I
enjoy
can
those
imagine.
as much.
I can imagine that's super tech heavy.
Yeah. All of the trying to type in shorthand, because the program I used, I typed in shorthand and then it expanded into actual words.
Really?
And trying to do that with words that were shorthand made it a lot harder.
Oh, of course, right.
So those ones were a lot harder to type. And like, so trying to type everything everyone says can make things hard. But I really love the psychology classes just because it gave me more outlook into what other people think, I think is one of the big ones. The medical classes were actually pretty helpful.
I mean, I can imagine it. You're getting a college education, like
a degree. I've attended classes for many different degrees. So, and I mean, granted, I've only got so much time in a day. So, I had about a normal student's workload every semester, but, I've been doing it for so many years and, I wasn't with any just one student for the entire semester. I'd have, 7 or 8 students I was working with, and I'd be going to different classes with each of them. So,
oh my God. So Jay, Jack of all trades, Boyce. That's incredible. Have you ever thought of just collecting random facts from all the classes and compiling them into like, this is what I learned this year?
I haven't done that, but there's definitely an aspect of my books that kind of has that. Certain classes that made an impact on me, I can go back to specific chapters that I was writing that day or week and be like, oh yeah, this was influenced by what I learned in that class, and just things like that. So not that I've compiled the knowledge I've learned, but it kind of seeps into my books. And, like I can definitely point at one scene in Siphon where I actually think it's an adapt, where I know I was in a psychology class that day and dealing with, the loss of a child and things like that. And I'm just like, there's a lot of that in my books of this story or this, whatever has influenced what I wrote today.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. And what an awesome way to kind of just get exposed to things. So, I guess one of the most common things you probably get asked about, and I'm going to do it in a roundabout way, is LitRPG.
Yes.
Now, I was listening to you doing a panel, and one of the things you guys mentioned was everybody does this. Why does everybody look hesitant when. And you guys were talking about spreadsheets. How important are spreadsheets to a good lit RPG?
Absolutely vital. I am the spreadsheet queen. I will fully admit that. I adore spreadsheets. They make life easier and they make life consistent. So
Ooh.
I started as an editor, honestly. And one of the first lit RPG books that I read had 5 books out when I was reading it. And I sent the author a spreadsheet of about 27 different sheets within a spreadsheet of, hey, this is what you're doing right, and these are the stats you got wrong, and this is like what you need to change.
Oh my God.
So like, and that's what if that's just what I do. Like anytime I'm reading something that can track, like that there's something that I can track, for years I've been getting out, I had a notebook next to me, and every time that changes, I made a note. I kept track of it because that's just the type of brain reader that I am. So like, I want it to be consistent. I want to say, if they say I got 2 dexterity in this chapter, it better be showing up on that next spreadsheet.
Honestly, what was the response? Did the author respond to that?
He did.
That doesn't sound like it was a pleasant response.
I was trying to be helpful. I really just wanted him to fix it. I really, and that's the thing. Most my friends now, when I read their books, and I do keep my own spreadsheet of their stuff, I'll send it to them afterwards and like be like, hey, you know, you can go back and fix this now, please.
Oh my God.
I'm that kind of friend. But you know, I think
everybody needs that kind of friend in their corner, though. That's the most useful.
And that's what it's hopefully supposed to be, is like, I don't just say, hey, this is wrong. I say, hey, this is wrong and this is what it should be.
That is hysterical. I think I'd be flattered though that someone paid that much attention to something that I did.
I would hope so. Like it shows that I care. So.
Right. You're not doing it like people
it's
do
not maliciously.
Right, like people do on Twitter where they'll just be like, "Oh, you spelt this word wrong," and then in that case, that's just to be mean. I think that's so funny. What would you say to people who are trying to dive into LitRPG, but who have failed math classes in the past and are scared and have PTSD from numbers?
So, I'll be honest, I don't like math.
This is big. This is a big confession here.
I do not like math. For Siphon, I had to have one of my fans create me another spreadsheet that let me just put the numbers in, and then it did the math for me. So that's, you know, I hate math. I'm good at it. I just don't like it. And so like statistics are fine for me. I'm good with stats. But like complicated mathematical formulas and trying to create them on spreadsheets is really hard for me. So I'd say you don't have to have a math degree. A lot of the stats aren't even that hard. Like it depends on what you do, depends on how you go about it, but this is your system. Like you get to create how much math you are. So like I just finished writing book 1 of a new series and I screwed
Super
myself
exciting.
over because I made so much math for that series. Like every single time she hits a new enemy, I have to make 14 calculations.
Are you kidding me? Are you trying to
No, I as soon as I realized that that's what I did, I was like, oh, this is gonna suck. Well, okay, not 14 calculations. There's 14 things that go into the calculation, and I usually make like 3 calculations.
Okay, what are you gonna do?
Aspects.
What are you gonna do if that author who you sent all those spreadsheets to comes back to you with all your math equations, and he's just been waiting for this for years? It's been sitting on.
Here's the fun thing that I have realized. While I have to know the math, my fans don't.
That's a good point, because I don't know any math.
Because while I do have that 14-part formula for the attacks, all they see is the end number.
Oh, that's a good point.
So while I did it because it's my world building and I needed to know, they have no idea what goes into that. So they can guess. They can make some damn good some good guesses, but they don't know everything that goes into it unless they have access to my spreadsheet, which only my editor has access to my spreadsheet. So
have you thought about doing a Goodwill Hunting giveaway where you kind of write some of the formula in and you're like, guess what this is, and then I'll give you the book?
I have not thought of doing that. That's an interesting. I mean, most of the what I did do was I allowed my fans to create characters in the
I
in the
love this
universe.
idea.
So I put up the basic. So part of the new thing is during character creation, they get access to 1,000 different traits that they can choose from. But the catch is the traits don't actually tell you what they do. All you get is the name.
Ooh.
So you have to guess. And so I allowed my people to just go through character creation and just make characters. I didn't necessarily tell them what happened afterwards, but it was kind of a selfish thing because I was like, I want to be able to make characters because I know what stuff does. So I wanted an organic way of kind of getting collating the information to get natural, like what people might have actually chosen characters when I create them. Because again, even though, a character might only show up for a chapter, I made that character completely. I made their stats,
Right.
I chose all of their blessings, I chose everything for them. So like I make so much more work for myself than I need to sometimes.
Yeah, but this is your chance. This is like when someone runs a race and then everybody's like, "Oh, great, you did that." And they're like, "Yeah, this wasn't even the important part. It was all the training before that." So this is your
Right.
chance to kind of get that out there, let everybody know this is a lot of goddamn work.
Oh, it really is. And part of it is too, the funny thing is I am definitely a pantser. So
Right.
I want to know what happens next in the story too. I've got ideas of what's coming, and there are certain events, like I had a defining event that I thought was going to be like an early moment defining event for this character, and it happened in the second to last chapter.
Well, what do you do then?
I was like building up to it the entire time, but it happened in the second to last chapter, and I was like, well, okay, I guess
That's
this is just setting up for
anticlimactic.
the rest of the series. Like, gosh, sorry, my computer just decided to add noise. Okay. So
Well, that's all right. We could use some sound effects on this podcast. The low production value here.
no worries. I was watching Felicia Day's podcast before because she was doing a panel on LitRPG. So I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to go watch that.
So, one of my questions. I quit World of Warcraft when I couldn't afford a horse. Would that make me too lazy to be a good main character in a lit RPG?
Most LitRPGs are driven by some sort of circumstance that makes it so they can't just, if they are lazy or like easy quitters, then there's got to be some aspect that says you can't. So a lot of LitRPG, like there's no going back. They're either stuck in a game or the world has like gone through an EMP or they're in a new world or something. Most of them can't go back. So that wouldn't really happen because I don't have much of a choice usually.
Right. What if I told you I did the same thing again 4 months later, the exact same thing in the exact same game, and I quit again because I was like, I still don't have enough money for a horse.
I would maybe a reincarnator. Like reincarnator LitRPG. Like you have to have the foreknowledge to try and be able to make that money to get it. Because quitting, quitters don't generally make great MCs.
No, I can imagine that's not being very fun. The first, challenge, trial, or tribulation, you're like, no, this isn't for me. I'm out.
Out, yeah, no, it's generally not the people who are going to be like, I'm out. This isn't fun. Chill, peace. You're not gonna. That's not gonna be the main character. That's gonna be a side character who, peaced out.
Or a very short book.
Or a very short book with a slightly unsatisfactory ending.
So obviously, you're on here to talk a little bit about Siphon. This is a spoiler-heavy podcast. I include a warning before everything. so don't worry about that. But I do have some questions about book 1.
Okay.
Is
Sure.
everyone in Andara hot?
I'm gonna say mostly.
Because
However, okay, I will preface this. The parts of Andara that she has been in are definitely the upper class society parts. And the upper class society parts have better resources and are more likely to raise stats such as charisma. So not everyone in Andara is hot, but most of the people she's come across are, because she hasn't been in the slums.
I mean, that's a good point. I was thinking dating apps must be popping off.
Yes. Yeah, no, she's got lots of options. Lots and lots of options.
I mean, one person is described as looking like an Abercrombie model, and Abercrombie model is hot.
Yeah, no, she's definitely in a very attractive sector of town, and yeah, that was on purpose. I admit it. I'm partial to pretty people.
That's very brave of you to say.
It's kind of why like my new one is an elf. Like when I play D&D, I cannot play like a tiefling or a dwarf or an orc, or I just can't bring myself to play a not pretty character. I have to have the pretty. I'm sorry. I like the pretty characters.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I was a little triggered though because I've told this story on the podcast before. I'm actually banned from Abercrombie from a misspent youth. So thank you for reminding me of that.
I actually don't know why I picked Abercrombie. It's just like one of the ones that like stuck in my head is like,
because have you seen the abs on the dudes on the bag? That's why.
That's probably it.
Couldn't get a better description.
It's just one of those things that stuck in my head is like, these ads are pretty people.
I mean, we have one guy described as a Thor-looking dude. We have another Tarzan-looking dude. These are some hot guys.
You can see where my crushes came through.
Also mine. So
one of my Disney crushes right there.
Oh, this is perfect. Thank you for mentioning Disney. Big part of this book. And I have to say, thank you for having me spend the last hour before we started this interview just in a YouTube rabbit hole of Disney songs. So I think I nailed the songs that are included in the book. So I think we have Let It Go. Oh, no. Yeah, we have Let It Go, I'll Make a Man Out of You, and A Whole New World. Am I missing any?
Let's see.
Jay is pulling out the book because that's the type of level of detail we go into on this.
So what happened was when I first published the book, I included something that's called Jade's. Oh, you cannot see this.
I cannot see that, but it looked cool.
There's an appendix called Jade's Musical Selections. I had to change it because in the first edition of the book, I did not change the lyrics at all.
Oh, so that's a no-go.
Yeah, so I had to go back and change the lyrics, and so I took out the appendix that said exactly what songs she was referencing because I didn't want to get sued.
But that would have been disappointing.
Yeah, since I have a first copy sitting on my bookshelf right next to me, I can tell you because I've got the appendix right here.
I'm so happy about this.
So let's see. So do you just want me to go through all the music in there, or do you want me to only list the Disney ones?
Let's do Disney for now because I've got other questions.
Okay, so Let It Go is definitely on there. A Whole New World. Those are the only Disney ones in there.
I thought I saw I'll Make a Man Out of You. I thought there was one, Let's Get Down to Business, when she's talking to, all right, I'll take a double check.
There might have been, and I might have just missed it when I was making the appendix, because I love that song, so it's highly likely that I did include it. Might also be in book 2. I don't know if you read book 2.
I have not gone to book 2.
But
Just
that definitely does sound like one of the songs that I would have included in book 1. So I'm betting you're probably right, and I just missed it. Because when I was making that appendix, I was just like finding and searching. So
I'm going to say, if anybody who's ever listened to this show knows, I'm definitely wrong. So, what are the top 3 Disney songs of all time?
ooh.
That's putting you on the spot. I fortunately knew I was going to ask this question, so I prepared the top 3 for myself. If you want to buy a little time.
All right, go. Tell me what yours are.
Let It Go is just the best. I Just Can't Wait to Be King from Lion King. And this one is, I feel like it's going to be controversial, Zero to Hero in Hercules.
See, I was going to say a Hercules song too, but definitely not that one. I was going to do Meg's song, which I can't think of the name at the moment, but
I think everybody knows.
Prize Run Judgment. I think I've already won that one, whatever it is called. And I think I'll Make a Man Out of You is definitely also high on my list.
That one's so good.
And if I had to say a third one, let's see.
I know I asked you just a free form question. I had to look up a list of these, and that's when the rabbit hole started.
Yeah. I say Let It Go is actually, it's a very iconic one, and it's so easy to get stuck in your head.
Yeah, it's an earworm song, right? Is that how it is?
It really is. I think one of my favorites, the one that I have mashed lyrics to the most throughout my entire life, constantly, I have been remixing Little Mermaid. Look at this stuff, isn't it neat? I can never think of the song titles.
Okay.
Complete.
I had a Little Mermaid song on honorable mention as well. I had Under the Sea.
Yeah, Under the Sea is who doesn't love Under the Sea? Like, it's a great one.
I think your references are one of the best things about this book. You throw these references in, and they'll sneak past you if you're not careful.
Like, I had to missed a lot of them. There's like
I definitely
300 references in book 1.
I had to look up the Dirty Dancing one. I was like, I know this is a quote from somewhere. I need to look this up.
There are a bazillion. It's one of my favorite things to do, because I'm just kind of like a random pop culture conglomeration of nerdiness. So like, I just, anything that makes me happy, I include. So
I think that though brings a sense of realism to this book. So Jade gets thrown into this world, right? And you're sometimes you get thrown into a world, you don't really talk about anything from the other world. But why not just start referencing things that you have fun with? One of my favorite things was, one of the first things she thinks of is, I'm going to invent a bunch of stuff and get rich, because that's exactly what I would do. I'd be like, I'm going to invent all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, like, why wouldn't you? That's all of us anyone who reads the genre basically has said at some point, like, if I went to a medieval world, what would I do? There is an entire Kickstarter about books that say everything you need to know to remake technology.
That's fascinating.
I ordered that book. It's still on Kickstarter, but it's still haven't gotten it yet. But I ordered it because I was so curious. I was like, I want to know, how do I make all of this stuff? Like, some of it, like the printing press, that's something that I know from my personal experience, because it's actually a big part of my religious history.
Okay.
So, like, I know a whole ton about that. I've gone and I've looked at original, like, original printing presses and stuff. Like, I know how that crap works. So, like, that would be really easy for me to remake. Or, well, I mean, not really easy, but I at least would know how to do it. And with the magic, that would be easy.
Well, so, that was one of my takeaways, how little I know about the way things work. Because I had that same experience. Oh, I do this, and I was like, I don't know how to do any of this.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that I was trying to be super strict about with when I was writing it, was that anything that I knew without Googling, and that's actually why some of her information is wrong. Like, people get mad at me a little bit sometimes because, like, they're like, oh no, that's not how it works. I'm like, it's not, but it's how I knew of it before I Googled. So like, I try and keep true to that. Like, if I do not have that knowledge without having to Google it, I didn't give it to her.
I mean, that's reasonable, right?
Yeah. I'm older than she is, and so I figured all of my years on the internet would have been condensed into her hospital stay. So why not?
I have to ask. In one part of the book, she goes, "Books, yay! I may not have the internet, but our library is almost as good." This isn't true.
I a library is not as good as the internet, but I could go and just spend days in a library and be completely happy. So for me, a library is comparable to the internet in its ability to suck me in for days.
But how could you ever seek validation from random strangers to boost your self-confidence?
I mean, that's sometimes I don't want to.
Neither do I.
Sometimes I just want to be lost in that. And honestly, that's still who I am today. Like, there are days when people will message me like, you haven't like posted or anything for a few days. I'm like, I was reading. I was sorry, I found a new good book and it was like 700 pages long, and you're not going to see me for 3 days.
And you know what? They should understand that.
I would hope so.
No, nobody ever has any mercy for anything. They expect you to be present at all times and be doing everything that they want you to do.
That is actually one of my biggest pet peeves of the internet. Is people telling me, hey, why are you doing insert X? You should be writing. And I'm just like, no, I'm a human being and I will write on my time. Like, you do not get to make demands of me. I know you pay my bills when you read stuff, but I'm a person and I'm going to be a person, and don't make those demands on me because it actually really pisses me off.
And then you're not going to get happy references in the
And
new
then you
books.
don't have your references. You get me wanting to kill people.
Now that is interesting because you keep it limited with your social media and your online presence. Now that's obviously intentional.
Yes.
And I assume healthy.
It's something that I had to do. I do have 2 Facebooks, and I kind of, since COVID started, lost the one that was my real life and basically just switched over to my author Facebook because that's
Right.
what I've been interacting with people. But it is very easy for me to get addicted to things. I know this just throughout my life. Like, it's super easy for me to fall down a rabbit hole. And so I have to limit it, because when I wrote book 1 and book 2, I did it in a really short amount of time. And I was getting really overwhelmed by trying to do everything. And so I had to really pare that back so that I didn't go crazy.
Right, of course.
Because I have an autoimmune disease. I don't have that much energy all the time. And so, that spoon theory that people talk about is perfectly a descriptor of my life. Like, I only have a certain amount of spoons, and if I'm going to be spending them on social media, then I'm not going to be spending them writing. But there's a difference between scrolling mindlessly, doom scrolling through social media, and actually responding to things. So I try and respond to direct questions and stuff to me. And like, I try and keep up my presence on certain things. And I'm a lot better about posting on Facebook than I am about seeing other people's posts. So,
Which is the right.
Yeah.
But looking at other people's posts, like, that doesn't help you. And, you want the interaction with your fans. So I think that people should appreciate that you're doing, what you're good at and what you really want to put your energy into.
Yeah. And honestly, that Facebook has been a helpful interaction for me for the most part. That's why I'm still on it, even though, I stay away from politics and anything like that. My Facebook is kind of an extension of me. I just want the happy. And I think that there's enough horrible things going on in the world that everyone can use a little bit more happiness. And so that's what I try and share. And so I don't know where I was going with that. But like some of these interactions with my fans, like the one today, I had a fan post in a group about how my books have been like they had asked the group for recommendations on something that was happy, and they eventually went with mine, and how it's been helping them to get that lift from depression. And with how awful things are and how many people are struggling with social interaction and connectivity being positive, like I've had a lot of those messages during COVID that my books have helped, which is really kind of one of those like, oh my gosh, things for me. Like my books are actually making a difference in people's lives. That's freaking awesome.
I mean, they are. This book is just, it's peppy, like put a smile on my face. It's got cute little laughs, and it's got, real like belly laughs. And it's just like a happy place to be. So I think that there's a lot of people who appreciate that.
And that was my goal. I mean, it actually wasn't originally my goal. It's just me. That's my personality. Like I prefer the happy side of things. Like my newest book is a little bit more snarky than that one is, and I think that's kind of COVID getting to me a little bit. But
right.
But I like the happy side of things. I like, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I kind of want a little bubblegum pop, and just I want to put a smile on people's faces. Like, so
definitely. And one of the things that you did really well, I mean, you did a lot of things well in this book, obviously, but one of the things that I found to be the best kind of like realistic look into things is when Jade is in the castle and she goes to look at this beautiful view, and she sees a raid, and she sees creatures dying, and she's like, everything is like, I choose to look at the positives in this. I've got to understand that there are things that are out of my control. I'm in this world, and I've got to do my best to keep a positive outlook on things and be able to protect myself. And I find that to be just, because everything's going great for her at this point. But there is, you wait for the other shoe to drop, because, she had such a unfortunate Earth life.
Right.
But that when we pull back the curtain a little bit, there is a dark side to things as well, and I think that a lot of people appreciate that.
Yeah, and that's always been it's really just my philosophy in life: is what you look for, you will find. If you focus on all of the dark things in the world, I mean, it's really, really easy to find them. But if you focus on, okay, what do I actually have control of? What are some of the good spots, and how can I, my attitude towards things, well, you'll find that there are good people and, good things going on. And it might take digging, but they're there. And it's kind of one of those things that I think the polarities tend to stick in our minds a little bit more.
Right.
The darkness and the super light. But a lot of just the everyday things are great, and people just kind of forget that.
So, on a lighter note, if you were in this world, what ability would you be leveling up at an unprecedented rate?
Oh, healing for sure. Obviously, like I said, I have an autoimmune disease, and it shows through the book. I wrote this book about a month and a half after I was diagnosed for the first time. And I kind of had one of those, why am I not doing what I want with my life? Come to Jesus moments, I guess. And I really, there are definite things of me in Jade. There's a lot of me in Jade. Her love of food was because I was struggling so badly with being told, hey, you can't eat 99% of your favorite foods anymore because they hurt you. And I'm like, no, but I want my pasta and my cheese and my milk and my sugar,
Right.
my chocolate, and I want that stuff. That's my food. Like, you have just denied me all of the good things in life. And I had to come to terms with that. And so, like, all of her craving for food that's me wanting to eat food. And I lost track of the question again.
So you would up your healing.
Oh yeah, I would up my healing. I think healing is one of the most underrated abilities. Like, I would rather, also, healers are usually on the back line.
That's a good point. It's an excellent point that people don't appreciate.
That's a big part of Jade's fighting ability is fighting from a distance. Simply because I don't want to be on the front line. I would totally kite someone to death. I would go for the archery. I would go for the long distance. But I would go for healing because not only can you make a positive impact, but you're not usually on the front lines.
That's an excellent point, and I totally would do the same thing. I think mine would be, I didn't write this down, but now that you're saying it, I think hiding. Just avoid everything, right? Just
to stealth away. Like, I do not want to be caught. Please don't look at me.
So, I've said this before. I think the best ability that a person could work on is jumping. If they just jump all day long, then they could jump incredibly high. And I think that'd be awesome.
Have you read Dakota Kraut's Ritualist?
No. Is there a thing of jumping in there?
You should definitely read that.
Oh my God, I gotta throw that on the list. I've said this multiple times that my biggest magical ability that I want is the ability to jump really high.
He becomes a jumplomancer, so.
What the? I gotta write that down. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's a great ability. Dakota's a pun master, honestly, and so like any of his stuff is just, it's going to be hilarious. Like, and that's actually one of the reasons why I love being under Mountaindale Press, is because working with Dakota, he you'll notice that most of the books in Mountaindale as well are fairly upbeat compared to a lot of the genre, and that's on purpose. It's because Dakota likes to put out happier stuff. Like, he doesn't buy into necessarily all the doom and gloom as much, and so it's a huge part of it is that it's that similar mindset of, I'm writing to be happy rather than just to be an edgelord.
I think I mean, we definitely need more of that. And I think that being able to pull out the positives in a lot of things in a genre that seems to be skewing darker and as fantasy goes, I think that this is a nice counter to that.
And I think that's actually part of why my books have done very well, is because it is different. Like I said, people go back to my books when they need a break. There's not a whole lot of slice of life either. It's usually an edgelord, like, oh my gosh, I have to follow all of these fights and blah blah blah.
Right.
Having just something that's lighter and and granted, I'm also one of the few females in the genre. So my books are not the typical LitRPG game lit books. Ironically, one of the few other slice of life books is written by my brother.
Yeah, this is interesting too. So your brother's also a writer.
Yeah.
You want You want to plug his books real quick?
Yeah, of course. So Xander Boyce, he's written, he's got 3 books out right now. Yeah, 3. Sorry, I know so many more of his stuff. Like we bounce ideas off of each other. So like I know way more about his stuff than anyone else. So like I know all of the things that he's got in the works and so I'm like having to remember, okay, what's actually done?
You hand him stat sheets?
Yeah. Yeah. So he's got one series that's called the Red Mage series, and the first book is Advent and second book is Temper. Those are System Apocalypse books about a guy who's in the Coast Guard, and when the EMP hits the world, basically, he's in an underground bunker and has to kind of fight his way out. So that one's really fun, very action oriented. His other one, which is one of the few slice of lives, is called Tall Rock, and it's Farming Livia. So his main character is actually a farmer. He becomes a farmer on a frontier edge in a virtual reality game. And so that one is just, it makes me happy. He tames a little baby dinosaur, like little dinosaurs.
Oh.
So, but it's kind of one of those, it's a mix between like a virtual reality game, D&D, and like Ark is what it's called. It's Ark and Stardew Valley.
Okay.
So like it's kind of a mashup of all of those things in a wonderful little, and it's also close to my heart because he actually created this world years and years and years ago and has been running D&D campaigns in it for years. And the Tall Rock book is actually fairly based on the last campaign he ran, which I was in. So I'm like, oh, my character did that. Like, that was me. So
how incredible to see it come to life like that.
It really is. It's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy his writing. He's gotten a lot better over the years.
That would be rough if you said on the podcast the writing's gotten a lot worse. So that's good.
Oh, that would be bad. No, I edited his books for a while. So I was his first editor, and I admit I got mad at him quite a few times because he would write in split sentences, and it drove me crazy. I was like, you got to finish a sentence. You can't just do fragmented sentences all the time. Like, why? But he's gotten much, much better. So, and he doesn't do that anymore. So that's great.
So he's got you to thank.
Yeah, my yelling made a difference. I swear.
I don't know if I could see you yelling.
It's not a common theme, but if I get really, really passionate, and mostly it's with him. Honestly, like he's the one who has the ability to bring out all of my emotions because he was my tormentor growing up. And so like we were constantly fighting, and like anytime you'll see us together, we're just bickering. That's just like we just bicker constantly. And so like on our Discord server, we share a Discord server, and anytime that we're talking, it's just like back and forth bickering, and people are just like, if they didn't know we were siblings, they might think we were married. And we have people ask us all the time if we're married. And we're like, no, please don't do that to us. We are not married. Like, no, we are siblings. And we're just, he got me into fantasy. He got me into D&D. He got me into LitRPG. Anytime that he reads a book and he needs someone to talk to about it, he's like, hey, go read this book so that I can talk to you about it.
So at least I know if I really wanted to, I don't know why I ever would want to make you mad, I'll just send you things in fragmented sentences.
Yes.
Don't tell the trolls this.
Although, I mean, it depends, because if it's in a book format, that'll get me riled up. If it's like a Facebook thing, I'm just like, I don't pay as much attention to it because it's the medium, and I'm
right.
seeing like Facebook as a, hey, I wrote this in like 5 seconds and then posted it because I do that.
Right. I mean, everybody does that, right? One of the goals of this podcast is to help break the tropes of what fantasy books are. This kind of sword and sorcery, guy saves the helpless princess, written for people who kind of don't leave their basement, neck beard, food all over the place, playing video games all day. And we've seen that that is not the case with a lot of fantasy books. So, what about your books kind of break that stereotype? I mean, you kind of answered this a lot, but
Yeah, and I mean, there are actually quite a few lit RPG books that start with the neckbeard guy. Like, and part of it is just the genre of people writing it. I have to say, like, I'm definitely one of there's a definite divide in the writers. Like, there's a group of older writers and there's a group of younger writers. Um, and you'll see it in some of the older writers. Like, they're very gung-ho in their ways. And the younger ones aren't as much, but like, it's the generation that grew up with those stereotypes and with that stuff. So like, but with Jade, even she was kind of that. I mean, not, she wasn't a neckbeard in a basement, but she was stuck in a bed in the hospital. She wasn't going anywhere. So those tropes, I think, are less applicable. That's trope specifically is less applicable to the genre these days, simply because it's not as true, and it's also more, I think, acceptable. That's, I'm trying to think about the way of life of millennials and the world that's been left for all of the generations, and even, I don't like the othering that is classifying people by generation, but
right.
there's a lot of it that says, these people have understood, like, it's not a terrible thing if you can't afford your own house. Like, the world has changed and we have had to change with it. And so, but there is very much the trope of, this is taking me out of a bad situation and putting me into something. And part of the biggest trope and the biggest draw, I think, of lit RPG is the ideology that you can be the hero. You can make a huge change in the world. Like, your life becomes more. And I think it's kind of a Cinderella trope, honestly. It's, I get to go and be the main character. So
Great. I think that you captured that perfectly, and I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, I've got to shoot out some novella ideas. This is
okay.
something that I love to do. So, one of my first novella I did, Jade becomes a competitive eater.
I think she's got that down, honestly. She eats quite a lot throughout the books. Quite a lot.
I've got more. I'm ready.
Okay, keep going.
When Jade Crip walks into the most gangsta bathroom she's ever seen, she actually gets spotted by a member of the Crips. The Crips who have been running a secret organization and recognize her Crip walk, and she becomes a part of the gang.
So that reference was actually added by one of my patrons. I'm not gonna lie. It was one, not a, no, well, it was a beta reader who put it in, and I thought it was hilarious, so I left it. So that one, it's not my area of expertise. That one was definitely one of my readers put that suggestion, and I was like, I'm gonna run with this because I think it's funny.
All right, and the third one might be a little dark. I'm not sure. The royal family is mentioned as being Hitler approved. So, is there a world where Hitler becomes an evil traveler?
There are. Oh, this is spoilery. So there are several mentions of dark ones in the books.
Yes, there are.
I will
You
straight up
can leave.
say the
You can
dark
leave.
ones are travelers who weren't good.
Oh my god!
So it's definitely a possibility of things that could be. Like, there are travelers who don't end up having the best of humanity in mind and defect to the other side.
You cannot see this if you're listening to this, but my eyes are popping out of the screen over here. And then my last idea, and I'll leave you with this. Are you there, God? It's me, Jade. Jade is Jade has Are you there, God? Is me, Margaret complex. And I have to admit, I would be doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. There comes a moment in book 4 that I've written. It's not
Dun,
released
dun,
yet.
dun.
When Jade hears a voice, and she kind of has that, if this is some kind of, like, because Jade's well read and she's read a lot of this genre, and so she's read those books about people who get transported for the gods' amusement. So her response is kind of more, if this is your idea of a joke, I'm going to come and find you. So yeah, that's hers is, if this is a cruel joke, we're gonna have words.
With Judy Bloom. So, where can everybody find you?
You can find me in lots of places. So on Facebook, maybe not lots, a couple places. You can find me in a couple places.
But you are there.
I am there. You can find me on Facebook. Facebook and Discord are really my big 2 interactions with people. I occasionally can be found on Reddit. I started doing that like a month and a half ago, and I try and keep up with it, but I'm not really good at it yet.
It is tough.
There's just so much. There's so much. At least on Facebook, I can control like my own page, right. And like on Discord, like it's my own server and stuff. So, so my personal Facebook page is Boyce. You can follow me there or friend me. I usually accept friend requests. I do have a Facebook page, which is Siphon. Oh, and Patreon. That's the other big one. You can find all of my work on Patreon. You can actually read ahead on Patreon. That's a fun thing for those who support me month to month. Yay, they get to read stuff before it's released. So like my patrons can read all of the book that I just finished this month, or I guess last month. It's a new month. All of the book that I just finished last month.
Now that is exciting.
They get it's the first draft. So it's not like a final draft, but they get my first draft and they can read the first 15 chapters of book 4 of Siphon. And because that's all up there. So Discord is good for just day-to-day interactions. Facebook is where you'll find a lot of my updates and pictures. And then Patreon is where you'll find my advanced chapters. So those are the 3 big ones. I do have a website, it's just jboyce.com. But that I've just got students working on and making for me. So it's kind of bare bones. But eventually it will be really cool. Eventually it's going to have like a gallery of all of the fan art I've received, and it's going to have a spreadsheet for you that you can like click on, hey, I want the stats from chapter 2 and chapter 46 so I can compare them, and you'll be able to do that really easily. So eventually it's going to be really cool, but I have to depend on students to make it. And every semester I get a new batch of students. So it's been going really slow, but it's very free for me. So, you know.
So patience, it's important.
Patience. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to join me today. Everybody go buy Siphon and go follow Boyce on her Patreon, her Discord, her Facebook, and her student labor induced website.
Yes, my free website. But the website should have the links to all of the other things, I believe. So that might be the easiest way to find the other stuff.
Unless you like making things difficult for yourself.
I
Don't
know.
don't ever try to not struggle. It's important. You might get an
I mean, I
ability
feel like a
for web
Google
surfing.
search for J Boyce will get you most of it. So
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
yeah, it was way fun coming on here. Thanks for having me.
Jay is one of those people that I had just as much fun after the interview hanging out with her that I did during the interview. And one of my biggest regrets in life is that I didn't keep the record button on, because we had a blast and I thought a lot of that stuff would be super interesting. So I'm going to save it to get her back on the show in however long it takes before I have to start running things back. She was so cool and a collector, one of the most dedicated collectors I've ever seen. Also, I don't know if she said this in the interview. I got to go back and look at it. But she wrote this book in like 21 days. She was on a spring break, and unlike everybody who goes, yeah, over spring break, I'm going to get back into running, or I'm going to start putting out a blog a day, or I'm going to learn a new language. That wasn't good enough for Jay. She wrote an entire book, and the book found a publisher. Just goes to show you that you can't be her. She also has an incredible collection of dice or die, whatever you want to call them, and wigs. So really cool stuff. Was a ton of fun to get to talk to her. Let me do these closing statements. I've got 3 interviews that I know are coming up in the next 3 weeks, and way more other stuff that I'm hoping to put together. But as of right now, next week is going to be Neitherlight by Spiffbo 6 finalist Sean Paul Stevens. The week after that is going to be Equalized by publishing house mate of Jay, Orion de Brun. And the week after that is the return of friend of the program, or maybe enemy of the program. I don't know where we land. Michael R. Fletcher. And honestly, I'm afraid to put that interview out because it is beyond wild. Thank you, everybody who's been listening to this. I'm super excited to continue doing this. Until next week, peace!